Hello, I'm North Hempstead Town Supervisor Judy Bosworth. Welcome to Project Independence's presentation of Keeping Seniors Safe, a series of informative talks by some of the leading experts in criminal justice. Project Independence has been a part of North Hempstead for over 10 years. While its main mission is to provide services that enable our seniors to stay comfortably in their homes as they age, we also focus on keeping our seniors informed and safe. Criminals and those who want to take advantage of our senior citizens have always been around. But today, in this climate of ever-changing technology and ways to communicate, it seems that criminals have found new ways to try and separate you from your money. We have to be cautious about to whom we open our doors to, and we have to be wary of mail, emails, and phone calls from people we don't know. Sometimes it feels like a minefield. It's often said that post-war generation is considered to be more trusting than other generations, and that most of our seniors were raised to be polite, even to strangers. There are people out there who may misuse this trust and who are looking to commit a crime that can harm you. This series of talks will give the viewer updated information about scams, how to avoid them, how to keep your identity safe, and who to contact for help if you think you may have been a target of a scammer. I hope after hearing from these experts, you will come away with the tools you need to keep you and your money safe.
I'm John Ryan, and I want to welcome you to the Project Safe series, or Seniors Against Financial Exploitation. There are currently more than 55,000 residents over the age of 60 living in North Hempstead. 10% of those residents have most likely experienced some form of financial abuse, with women being abused at a higher rate than men. These forms range from home improvement scams to Medicare, Medicaid fraud, phony IRS threats, and various forms of financial exploitation. Nationally, it is estimated to cost seniors over $3 billion each year. North Hempstead Supervisor Judy Bosworth and Project Independence want to empower you with the information you need to protect yourself. We believe that you will find these shows informative and useful. On today's show, we have with us Margaret Carrozza, an elder law attorney and former New York State Assemblywoman.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for coming today. I want to start off with a statement that I say all the time. No choice is a choice. And I have found, dealing with seniors, that they want to do something, okay? They know it should be done, and they're going to do it tomorrow. And unfortunately, in the interim, life happens, and so they didn't make a choice. They didn't make the choice they wanted to. The choice was made for them. And I find this a lot when we're dealing with second marriages. Seniors, and because we want seniors to be active, we want them involved in the community, and fortunately, sometimes people connect on a higher level and fall in love, and they want to move their life forward. But there's downfalls to that also.
Well, I think, just in terms of losing assets across the board, whether we're talking about young adults or seniors, one of the single best ways to lose half of your assets is a marriage that doesn't work out. So when we're talking about seniors, whether they are divorced or a widow or widower, thinking about taking the plunge again, there are some very important statistics. Second marriage failure rate is over 60%. So often we have a widow or widower who takes the plunge, maybe the loss was recent of their spouse, and they're not thinking clearly, and they go into a legally unprotected second marriage. If it doesn't work out, if they're among the 60% that it won't work out, they're going to lose half of their assets. And even if that marriage does work out, it's going to end anyway. It's going to end with the death of one of the parties. So when we have a second marriage, the couple is more likely to have children from prior marriages. So if we want to avoid blended family warfare upon the death of one of those parties, they need to set up some planning on the front end. So typically when we have a second marriage, the home will be owned by one of the parties.
Okay.
So we need to protect ourselves. If the home is in your name and I'm the surviving spouse, I have no legal protections.
Right.
And if your adult daughter kicks me to the curb, now I'm homeless. So we need to take the bull by the horns, and as you said, no decision is a decision.
Absolutely.
No
Absolutely.
action
is an action.
Absolutely.
Technically. It's an inaction, which is negative in this kind of situation. I have a true story of a friend who got a second marriage, both healthy, but up in years, and he started developing Alzheimer's. The woman brought him to his daughter and said, I didn't sign up for this. But everything was legal. She left him there and went back to the house that was now in her name.
It's amazing, and you bring up a very good point. When we have a second marriage, we need to think about not only our own long-term health care planning, but that of the new spouse, because every state in the United States imposes spousal liability for each other's long-term care claims. So one of the questions that I would want to ask someone before getting into a second marriage is, what type of long-term care insurance do they have for themselves so that I am not potentially wiped out on account of their long-term care claims? So that's not really a scam, yet it is a way that someone can unwittingly lose all of their assets.
Yeah, well, what we're talking about here is, not a scam, sloppiness.
Absolutely.
Really, you can be in love, but you have to, scams can come into it, unfortunately, because not all the marriages are real and somebody's looking for an opportunity to take advantage of somebody. But what you have to do is plan.
Now, you brought up people trying to take advantage, and in my field, being a trust and estates attorney, I see a lot of people who have just gone through a devastating loss because they lost their spouse of 40 or 50 years, and they're a little bit vulnerable. And unfortunately, people come out of the woodwork. There are con artists who read the obituaries to try and come up with good targets in the neighborhood. But we also want to protect ourselves from possibly falling under the influence of someone who pretends to be a romantic interest later in life. So, my concern within my own marriage is who would descend upon my poor husband if I predecease him. And one of the suggestions that I make to all happily married couples is that they consider doing a post-nuptial agreement whereby the married couple promises each other that if they are the surviving spouse, that they will enter into a prenuptial agreement prior to taking the plunge again. Because if my husband is the surviving spouse, I imagine a go-go dancer could talk him out of all of his assets, leaving our kids with nothing. So if he signs up beforehand, he can blame it on poor dead me that they're going to do a prenuptial agreement
later. I never heard that. I understand that situation because that happens.
Absolutely.
One person goes in with a lot of money and has a few children. The other one might have one child and no money. The one with money dies, and the other 3 kids could be out. And there's no obligation, and it's legit. If we put everything in joint with rights of survivorship, you're done.
Absolutely. And the other thing that we need to think about is co-signing loans. So this isn't necessarily a scam. This is your beautiful granddaughter asks you to co-sign a college loan. You should never, ever, ever be in that situation. A lot of people think that co-signing a loan is simply providing a reference for someone, but immediately when you co-sign that loan, even absent the primary borrower defaulting, the entire amount of that loan is on your credit score. And it's going to disrupt your debt to credit ratio and pull your score down so that your credit card company can spontaneously raise the interest rate. And you're in a difficult predicament. I had one client who did this against my advice. the granddaughter tragically died, and now the grandmother had to take out a reverse mortgage to cover the cost of the student loan. So I think, you know, we need to be careful within our own families.
Right, I agree.
Often.
You're saying that, and I recently had one also with a client, but fortunately it was a car, and he died. But the other person sold, you know, they cleaned up,
Yes.
a few dollars lost, it wasn't a big deal, because they didn't have the money to, you know, continue the payments for the car. They were being nice and said he needs a car. So the end result was okay, but you don't think those things through.
Absolutely.
And the car could have been a mess, maybe no one wanted to buy it. I mean, he maintained it, but it's consequences. You know, we have to pay attention to the consequences of our actions. And when you're looking at something and you're going to get involved in it, is it in line with what you're trying to get for your future? And sometimes things are, and sometimes things can go awry, unfortunately, and you see it probably more than anybody, that it was a perfect plan, but a glitch came down the road which wasn't foreseen whatsoever by anybody. But on balance, going to an elder law attorney prior to making these kind of commitments is vital.
Well, I encourage everyone in advance to try and erect some guardrails to try and keep ourselves safe from predators as we grow older.
Right.
You know, they say the number 2 fear that people have is the fear of aging. And I believe part of that is a fear, A, of the unknown, and a fear of B, being at people's mercy and perhaps being taken advantage of. So I think on the front end, whatever I can do today to protect the Anne Margaret of 25 years from now, I'm going to be ahead of the game. So that is appointing someone to make healthcare decisions within a healthcare proxy, appointing 1 or 2 people who can act for me financially by way of a power of attorney. And there is a lot of room for misuse and abuse of these advance directives. So I tell people, if you don't have a good candidate to appoint under a power of attorney, don't do the document just to have the document,
I agree.
If you don't have a good candidate, don't do it. If you have a B+ candidate, maybe see if you can put 2 B+ candidates together, so hopefully they're watching each other.
Right. In my opening remarks, I said there's $3 billion a year that gets taken from seniors. That number is most people feel much higher, because so much within the family doesn't get reported. When you have the son or daughter taking advantage of mom or an aunt, that doesn't get reported because it's like, oh, don't tell on him, we're going to get him in trouble. But that's a lot of money also gets taken.
It really is. And I think, you know, the time that people are most vulnerable is after a major loss.
Right.
So my general advice to all of my clients is, any big decisions that you can put off during that first year, you're wise to put them off. Now, you know there are some things that have to be done.
Exactly.
We have to notify Social Security. There are certain tax elections that need to be made within 9 months of losing a spouse. Anything else, deciding to make a big move to another state, any major life decisions that I think we should put off. And know ahead of time that we will be a little bit vulnerable. So be a little bit cautious. You know, a lot of these home improvement scam artists come calling when there's been a recent loss. And I think I shared this story with you before, and it always bears repeating, in my opinion. This home improver contractor called upon a recent widower and offered for $25 to put this water repellent shield on his roof. He goes up there, does whatever he did, came back down and said, you have a big problem. What do you think happened the next time it rained? Guy had water in the house. So this contractor made the problem, and he ended up scamming the homeowner, because when the homeowner called him, unfortunately he was able to find his card with the number. When he called him, he gave him a quote of $16,000. He was barely scraping by on Social Security, said, I can't afford to pay. So he arranged for financing, but he was really mortgaging his house. And he quickly fell behind on these payments, had a happy ending because a neighbor got involved, and a neighbor called the district attorney's office. and that guy is behind bars today.
Good, but there's so many of them out there. And I try to tell anybody dealing with a death or any crisis, stop, calm down, and have a trusted friend with you. Because, and I think I've shared this story with you, and it's a friend of my wife's. Husband died. The woman needed some money from his IRA. He had $425,000 in his IRA. He could roll it over for free, not for free, but to the spouse. She wanted $300 more a month. He sold everything in it, gave her a check for the whole thing, reopened a personal individual account, and when tax time came, she owed $185,000 in taxes. And he winds up with double set of commissions. And that's still in the process. That hasn't been resolved yet. And she did it on her own. So then finally when she came to me, I said, why didn't you ask anybody to go with you? I mean, I didn't know the woman at the time. Her daughter worked with my wife. Why did you? Well, they're secretive. People don't want people to know.
We need to put a team in place of trusted, a financial advisor, an attorney, an accountant, a team of folks that you trust, and you need to be able to talk to them and run decisions by them.
Right, and I think I'm saying this correctly. Within 311, calling 311 or Project Independence, they have social workers there. You can have a conversation with somebody. If you question something, whatever your concern might be, they're not going to give you the legal information. They're not going to give you financial information. But they can talk to you and say, you need to get some professional advice with this. Don't go it alone, because the ramifications can just, it can wreck a person's life. And at that late stage in life, you're not making it up. It's too, time is not on your side anymore.
That's a very good point. You don't have 20 years of earning potential to get it back.
That's why when you see the seniors, it breaks my heart when you see a senior taken advantage of. It kills them. When we talked earlier with people, it's just one of those things that it's so hard to come back from.
You know what's interesting? These scam artists, I'm always amazed by how brilliant they are. They should go legit, because some of them are just crazy brilliant. I'm often named as an executor for clients of mine, we had a long relationship over the past 20 years if they don't have close family. And there was one estate where we were paying the bills and going through all of his records, and there was one monthly expense that we couldn't make heads or tails out of. Okay. It was a 3-letter abbreviation, the name of the company, and he was sending $200 a month to this company. We went back through old records and shoe boxes, and shortly after he lost his wife, 15 years prior to his death, this company sent him a letter saying, Mr. Smith, we understand you sing in the church choir. These songs are protected by federal copyright law. You may have not realized that you were violating federal copyright law singing these songs. We can provide protection for you. And he was sending this check dutifully every month for 15 years to buy this copyright protection. Now,
that's amazing.
That scoundrel was never caught. The district attorney tried, but they didn't leave a trace.
That's
so, I mean, you just shake your head at this stuff, because they're...
And just in the numbers quick, that's $36,000 that was taken from the man.
Oh, you're good, John.
Over the, it's just like, it's so sad. And you're right, if they only, put their efforts towards something good.
Absolutely.
But they're out there, and the number of scams, and you can't keep up with them. As soon as the first one starts, the second one comes in. I even heard of one this morning that Con Edison trucks outside your house, and you're getting a call that you have to pay your bill immediately. They're going to be turning off your water. Had nothing, or your gas and electric rather, had nothing to do with the truck outside. But they're tracking the truck. And if it's in front of your house, you look out the window, you get nervous, and you give them the credit card to pay your bill. You give them the credit card to pay your bill, now they have your credit card.
Amazing.
It's just what they, the number of scams potential that you can't keep up with them. And I'm not trying to say that the world is so terrible. I think programs like this just raise red flags that people have to stop, slow down, pay attention to what they're doing, and really think what you're doing right now, is it for where you're trying to get them? I'm not saying that properly, but you have a goal in mind. Are you doing the right steps to get there?
You know, and it's not only seniors. I see adult children sometimes, if they're accompanying mom or dad into a rehab setting and they inadvertently sign some of the admissions paperwork thinking that they're being helpful, they can unwittingly undertake a third-party guarantee to cover the cost of care. So,
Really?
yes, adult children need to be careful too when dealing with their parents' financial dealings.
Right, and that's just a mistake. But the issue that's coming out of all of this is everybody has to be mindful every day of what you're doing. Some of it's scams, some of it's, and of course you want your mother or your father to be taken care of, so you want to do the best thing for them. But the person on the other side of the desk doesn't really have your interest at heart. They have to do the paperwork that day. So whoever signs it, signs it. And I didn't realize that. Then you could wind up actually being a guarantor, so to speak.
Well, I think, you know, we're living in a different society than we were living in 30, 40 years ago.
Right.
And it's a little bit of, you know, a game of gotcha. We have to be so much more careful and so much more protected than we did some years ago.
And that's why it's very fortunate when people have you on their side. I want to thank you for watching Project Safe. My special thanks to Margaret Carrozza for being with us today and for sharing some wonderful ideas on how to stay financially safe. I'm John Ryan, and until next time, please be safe, and if you have any concerns or questions about anything on this program, call 311 and ask for Project Independence.
My name is Margaret Carrozza. I'm an estate planning and elder law attorney, and my quick tip is following the loss of a loved one. Please avoid entering into any legally binding contracts. You're in a little bit of an emotionally compromised situation at that point in time. Be kind to yourself and don't do anything that could potentially jeopardize your future.